This is the last of 3 lessons dedicated to civil and political rights. In it, we will cover the subcategories of civil and political rights. Like all legal norms, civil and political rights are meant to safeguard certain values considered worthy of protection by states or by the international community. In the case of human rights, these values stem from the central concept of human dignity. We may group civil and political rights according to the values being defended. These values relate to the protection of the individual as such and to the individual in relation to other people, to his or her milieu, or to his or her state. According to this distinction, the following 5 subcategories of civil and political rights may be proposed. These are the civil and political rights that pertain to the most intimate ambit of the individual. The generic value underlying this first group of civil and political rights is the protection of the immediate sphere of personal security, privacy, identity of the person. It is the sphere to which each particular individual should have sole control of access. This means that it's up to him or her to allow others to have access. Examples of these rights are the right to life and to personal integrity, the right to personal liberty and security, the prohibition of slavery, the rights to a name, to sexual self-determination, to intimacy and privacy of the family and of the correspondence. This subcategory of civil and political rights also comprises the freedom of conscience, including the right to uphold religions, philosophical or political doctrines. However, the right to publicly express one's beliefs or to proselytize is a civil liberty, and as we will see in a future class of this course, it may be subject to certain limitations, unlike the freedom of conscience as such. One may wonder how might the freedom of conscience be violated if it is not exercised or manifested openly. To this, it is replied that history shows many sad examples of rulers forcing their subjects to convert to a certain religion or to express support for a given political party or leader. The right to property of the goods logically related to this intimate sphere of the individual, such as beddings, eating utensils, or personal correspondence, is also included within this subcategory of inviolabilities. Beyond this intimate sphere, property rights ought to be considered economic or social rights. A person may be utterly passive, and yet all the inviolabilities just described still apply. For example, state agents may not enter the abode of a recluse person without a proper legal reason or a court authorization. Unlike the previous category, this one has to do with the individual interacting with other people. The general underlying value here is the liberty of action in the political, social, and economic spheres. Within this subcategory of civil and political rights, we find the freedom of expression, including the freedom to seek and receive information, the freedoms of assembly, association, movement, and residence. A recluse person also enjoys these rights. However, in order to exercise them, he or she must come out of self-imposed reclusion and interact with other people by going to work, moving about, joining groups, expressing him or herself, etc. As we will see in a future class, all civil liberties may be legitimately subject to restrictions in certain circumstances. This is not the case with most inviolabilities. Such difference does not mean that inviolabilities are of a higher hierarchy than civil liberties. It is just that, unlike inviolabilities, the exercise of civil liberties presupposes a lot of social interactions. Such interactions must necessarily be regulated, much as the intense traffic in a city requires red lights and traffic rules. These rights are meant to acknowledge the status of the individual as a citizen or member of a political community. They include the right to make petitions to the authorities and the right to participate in the political life of the community by voting and by running for public office. To ensure the enjoyment of political rights, states must not only refrain from impeding it, they must also take positive steps like organizing electoral rolls, setting up electoral supervisory agencies, and the like. The value of equality or freedom from arbitrary discrimination is common to all human rights, be them civil and political or economic, social and cultural rights. The right to equality will be dealt with in 2 future lessons of this course. Let us just anticipate that a discrimination is arbitrary if it is based on a personal characteristic which the person cannot change, or it is not legitimate to demand that he or she changes it because it is something that belongs to his intimate sphere of identity, security, or privacy and does not affect the rights of others. Historically, the most common basis for arbitrary discrimination have been race, religion, and gender. Equality does not mean that people necessarily enjoy a given right. For instance, freedom of movement may be legitimately subject to suspension or limitations in certain circumstances. Yet, the right to equality prohibits that either the full enjoyment or the restriction of rights is applied differently on the basis of origin, sex, beliefs, and other such criteria. Thus, equality may be deemed a formal right rather than a substantive one. This, of course, does not mean that it is in the slightest less important. Needless to say, all the aforementioned rights are useless unless they are assigned to a legal subject entitled to them. Of course, all human beings are entitled to human rights. Yet, vis-à-vis their political community, human beings may have the condition of a citizen, a national, a civilian, or a refugee, among other categories. For each of these categories, there are special norms at the national level and internationally. Citizens enjoy certain political rights that non-citizens do not. The same applies to nationals versus non-nationals. In case of armed conflicts, civilians have immunities which combatants do not have. The status of refugee, including rights as well as some restrictions, is regulated by international refugee law. Finally, let us recall that in order to be effective, every civil and political right must have a legal tool to uphold it whenever it is threatened or affected. This tool usually consists of a judicial action, that is, the right to seek remedy before national courts or eventually, as a last resort, before international protecting institutions. Please visit our website mooccchile.com, and you are kindly invited to watch the next class of this course.